2026 is going to be an awesome year. We got some pretty cool stuff coming up. First off, we got Foundations of Recovery. This is our flagship program. We're starting it in January.
This is for anyone, man, woman, or couple who wants to come and reclaim their heart from shame, trauma, and betrayal. We start off with an education on all sorts of principles, give you the common language. We feed you from a fire hose in terms of all things recovery.
It is such a great start to recovery. And we get at the roots of things, Tyler. This isn't like any other program. Like, this is our healing journey in process, and Foundations is where we begin.
If you look at the value that you're getting there to kick off a good recovery with all of the right education, all of the right language, and a team to get you started while also being directed by Brannon and myself through the whole process, what a deal.
So if you're interested, if you're struggling, if you've been wanting to do something for a long time, jump into this. This only comes around every so often, and we would love to have you there.
Click the link in the description to sign up for it. And to make it even sweeter, we're also including a raffle for a free pass to the Radiant Dawn retreat. Anyone who signs up for Foundations will be added to the raffle for that free Radiant Dawn pass. If you're a man and you sign up for Foundations, your name still gets entered, and you can give that pass away if you win it to any woman that you want to.
So what you're saying, Tyler, is if you sign up and participate in Foundations, you could possibly go to Radiant Dawn for free?
That's exactly what I'm saying, which is crazy because Foundations by itself is already an insane value.
Man, I sound so salesy. But it actually is awesome. So come to Foundations. And even if you don't come to Foundations, sign up for Radiant Dawn. It's beyond therapy, the best healing experiences that you can have.
Click the link below and come join us. Do I need to define myself as an addict in order to move forward in my recovery?
Welcome to the Real Talk Recovery Podcast with the Therapy Brothers. We're brothers, we're therapists, and we know recovery.
Bring your stories, your questions, your successes with real recovery. All right, you guys, I am alone today without Brannon. Brannon decided that he wanted to be a world traveler, so he's decided to pack up and head out to Ireland and England and spend some time with his wife. So unfortunately, or fortunately, however you want to see it, it's just me today, but we've got a good guest on too that we'll get to in just a second. I wanted to just read a review. We've got several reviews from you over the last several weeks, and we really appreciate those. And so I want to share one, especially this particular one, because it throws a shout out to one of our past callers. As you guys know who are listening, the best thing about our show is our callers because of their willingness to come on and share themselves and share so freely. And so I wanted to give this one a shout out here. This one basically says, giving empathy for my partner's pain. We did an episode a while back with a caller named Nikki, and it just says, listening to Nikki share her story gave me so much insight into the pain and story my wife is feeling inside. I wish Nikki had 3 more hours with you all to unpack the trauma and get to the core of understanding she has inherent value. This podcast as a whole has given me great tools to know I am enough. I have what it takes, and my wife cannot answer my core questions for me. I'm grateful to be in recovery and have a resource like this to continue growing every day. I've shared this podcast with my wife and sent her to the Radiant Dawn website as well. Thank you for the review. Thank you for the shout out to Nikki. Nikki was a courageous caller that came on who was willing to share herself freely, and it was a pretty impactful episode for a lot of people. So, and thank you for sending that review. Not only for Nikki, but also for us. We appreciate the feedback that we get. So, all right, we're going to get into our caller today. Caller Chris, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Tyler.
Why don't you just kind of introduce yourself, share whatever background you feel comfortable with, and ask your first question.
Sure. So my wife and I, we've been married about, 18 years, 2 weeks ago. And real quick, we some stuff came to light last summer. She discovered some things that I was doing online, and kind of went sideways quickly. I've been out of the house, 6 months now. We're first first handful of weeks were really all over the place, as I know it can be for a lot of folks. I think we've gotten in with some good therapists of late, and we've got a therapeutic separation that's in place now. It's supposed to end at this month, but which we'll get into. But I think we're in a much better place than we were certainly several months ago. But there's still some significant hurdles, and just trying to work through, what disclosure means, and some of the things that it seems like my wife is asking me to accept and believe in order for me to truly be getting it. I think it's, I've gotten, even as recent as last week when I was out of town traveling with my folks, she was sending me texts like, you just don't get it. You're a narcissistic addict, and, you've been abusing me for 18 years. She never really elaborated on that, but I assume she meant emotionally. It certainly hasn't been physically. And I think some of those things are just really hard to. I know that I've done wrong. I'm ready. I think with the guidance of our respective therapists, we're in a spot. They believe when we met 3 weeks ago in person, the four of us, that we were in a spot to move forward with the disclosure, and then stuff just kind of went sideways again. It's kind of comments like that, and asserting things like, well, you don't understand how triggers work. You don't. You haven't been honest with your family. You've been lying to our therapist. All these different kinds of things, and it's just it's very hard to know what. We felt like we're in the hands of two good therapists who, they didn't have the final say in everything, but if they felt like we were in a spot to move forward and now we're not, it's very confusing. And, I'm happy to, well, not happy, but I'm ready to own all the things that I've done and the ways that I've hurt her. But some of these things feel, I don't know. It's hard to accept some of those things, and not they're not going to be easy. I get that, but some of these things, like the narcissistic thing and being an addict forever. Saying that was something that was well in place, well before I met her. It feels like a bit of a death sentence, or it's something that it feels very fatalistic. Let me just put it that way. So
you're saying it feels fatalistic to have to label yourself as an abuser or a narcissist or an addict? Is that kind of what you're saying?
Yeah. That it's just that I don't know how I overcome that or even work with that. And it's because I'm making this up to her. I'm just, I don't know where, yeah, I mean, it's hard enough to deal with, being told that this is infidel. I mean, she's the only person I've ever had sexual relations with. And I recognize that I've done wrong here. I deluded myself into thinking the watching porn was not the same thing as infidelity, and I couldn't have been more wrong. And I want to own that, and I want to move forward. But like I said, I'm concerned that these are specific things, as she said, but I'm also worried that whatever I'm going to say isn't ever going to meet the what her measure is of being contrite or identifying the right problem or whatever. It's frustrating, and I feel a bit of a loss because I know I'm all over the place here, but that's maybe that speaks to how confused I am. So
yeah, no, okay, yeah, let's just I want to just maybe get some clarification and then come back to kind of where you currently got to,
Sure.
just so that I understand a little bit more. Um, you've been with your wife for, it sounds like you said 18 years.
Yep. Married 18 years, been together about 19 and a half. So,
Okay. And through that whole time, has pornography been around before even your marriage, or did it come in during your marriage, or how long has pornography been, how long have you had a relationship with pornography?
um, maybe probably middle school, high school.
Okay.
I mean, it's never, and this is where I struggle a little bit with the addict part because I don't, maybe I'm deluding myself, and I'm open to that possibility, but I don't never felt like it's a huge draw for me. I mean, has it been there in some form or fashion? Yeah. I mean, whether it was my dad's, 70s Playboys in the basement or whatever, but uh, yeah.
So it's been there since middle school or high school. On one hand, it's been there for a long time, then for the better part of your life. On the other hand, you're saying it hasn't necessarily felt like defining yourself as an addict has been the right term, even though it's kind of caused some problems for you, and it's obviously caused some problems in your marriage recently. Um, where has it made your life unmanageable, and where have you felt like it's not really that big of a deal?
I think the unmanageability part, I'm still, I know it's a central part of, I'm in an SA group. I'm working with my part, with the sponsor there, and we explore a lot of that stuff. I don't want to come off as arrogant about it, but I don't know that the unmanageable part is one part that I'm really struggling with, because and maybe it's almost worse in some respects, that I felt like that it could be manageable in some sense.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know. I mean, it felt like the way I've told myself anyways, it would be, 10 minutes here and, 10 minutes there or whatever else, but it wasn't, and it doesn't have to, I get it. It doesn't have to be extremes. It doesn't have to be 3-hour binges at 1 a.m. or, whatever else. But, and I know it's not fair or right to compare it to some of the stories or experiences of some of the brothers and sisters in my SA group, but it just, I don't know. Maybe I've deluded myself over time, that I'm a lot more in control than I think I am. But I don't. It never felt like it was. I think in the. I've always been kind of scared of sex generally,
Mm-hmm.
and it's maybe a little bit odd that it would be, that it would be until I was 29 years old that I would have sex. But it was like, I certainly had feelings for other women throughout the years, but I wanted it to be the person that I was going to be with forever. And, I think I probably told myself some stories that if I just did this, then it wasn't the same. But I don't know. I'm talking myself in circles here.
That's okay. So basically, you've only had actual physical sexual relationship with who is the woman who is your wife.
Correct.
You've said you've been scared of sex your whole life, even though you didn't necessarily consider like the use of the pornography from the time you were in middle school all the way until present time, as you in your head saw those things as differently.
I did.
As different. Uh-huh. And you weren't scared of the way that you were using pornography the same way you're scared of being physically intimate with like your wife.
Yes. Yeah. I felt the connection part was important to me. I mean, even when I would have, I never judged them or anything like that, friends in college or high school or beyond, having one night stands or, kind of going through girlfriends like crazy, whatever. I just never felt like that was something that I wanted something more. And I was able to dissociate myself, I guess, between something that I saw on a screen or a magazine as different than, I maybe that's how I told myself that it wasn't that big of a deal because there was no connection there. And I get, that maybe that's, what do they say? The opposite of addiction is connection. And maybe that's where I'm deluding myself that's where there wasn't that connection there. And that's how I could justify it to myself. But I wanted it to mean something. I wanted it to, and that's, there was even a girl that I really liked in my 20s who was interested in me. And I didn't feel like I was, I turned her away. And maybe that could have been something special, but because that was so important to her and I didn't feel like I was ready for that just didn't work. And I know my wife has told me and I kind of feel in some respects like she'll go back and diagnose things where maybe things weren't going great in our relationship where, oh, well, that was porn talking, or that was your addiction talking. And like she'll reference one email, like we have 2 children. One was an adoption. It's her son. We've been together 20 years. He's 21 now. But our daughter actually turned 13 today. But we got pregnant so quickly with our daughter, like within a week of getting up. I think there was, she's going back through all these emails and whatever else. Like there was a time, 6 months after Lola was born where you said you were scared of getting pregnant. And I know that sounds like in hindsight, it sounds like a digression. Like, that stuff scares me. I love my daughter, I whatever else, but the prospect of having more kids and more things we can't afford and whatever else, it scares the hell out of me. Mm-hmm. So it's like I don't know. I think that's, I want sex to be a healthy thing that we enjoy and not something that we're scared of. Not that I have anxiety about because I'm not doing I'm not making her happy with it and all those kind of things. So it's, I think that some of the time, certainly over, I've been sober for 6 months now, because I recognize that I don't want anything that would cause pain or any anything between us.
Mm-hmm.
That's
So once D-Day happened, if I'm hearing you right, you haven't acted out with pornography since D-Day happened, and you've been separated for 6 months now.
That's right.
And there's been enough of a motivation for you to not necessarily go back to the well to act out the way that you have for years and years and years. Mm-hmm. Right. And what I'm hearing is, I just want to make sure I'm clear, and I maybe want to come back to a few things too.
That's fine.
I want to also just kind of like make sure I'm understanding the nature of your acting out too. It's been with pornography, never with real people. It's been maybe hit and miss, not consistent. Is that what I'm hearing, right?
That's correct.
What have been your purposes for its use over the years? Is it for coping emotionally? Is it for entertainment? Is it for curiosity? What have been your reasons for using it?
Maybe all 3 of those things you just mentioned. I think I think certainly one of the things that in the course of working through with my therapist is recognize that it's that I retreat to myself sometimes when things aren't going so well. Mm-hmm. And maybe it's not to try to put a shine on it, but I think most of the time it's constructive. Like I'm a huge dork with books and history and philosophy, and I'll bury myself in that. But sometimes it'll go somewhere else.
Mm-hmm.
I'll go to that. It's a and I think the curiosity part. They're not having any history with with sex personally. That's not the place to learn, probably, but at the same time,
a lot of people go.
I don't somebody who's educated like myself should know better, but I don't. That's conflated that with reality, and that's not right.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's the kind of thing that I should want, and I still I think the biggest, like back to our comment, I think one of the, I got all my wife's questions for the disclosure, and most of them she was right to ask, or all of them she's right to ask. I can't tell her that she's not right to ask anything, but some were more difficult to deal with than others, of course. But I think one of the questions was, do you think that you're acting out and covering up has been the root cause of our relationship problems? And I know it's not going to be what she wants to hear, but I don't think so. I think I know it's my lack of vulnerability. And I think in some respects it's hers too. It's not my job to diagnose her, but I think we're just, we've both been kind of strongly independent people for a long time. And I'm over the moon that she's in my life and that we're together. But I think when we don't hear what we want to hear, we retreat to each other, to ourselves pretty quickly. And I think it's that lack of vulnerability that's really it's my problem. I know it is. Mm-hmm. I can't speak to her, but I think it's the same or similar anyways, that we can't be open and honest with each other a lot. That could be something as mundane as finances or the health of our kids or whatever else, but it definitely applies to this.
Yeah.
It might not be the smoking gun kind of answer she's looking for, but if she wants this to be about honesty and truth, I mean, that's the most, that's the deepest part of our problems over the years. It's not, I don't think has it helped? Obviously, no, certainly not. But I think if it's our inability to be open and honest with each other and understand what each other's challenges are and how we can, and our roles in it, that makes everything so much worse. So.
Yeah, I think you're probably getting even to the place where I want to get to with you as we discuss what's going on with you and your wife. For sure. I think you're there. And I wonder if there's like a game of semantics being played between the two of you that's actually preventing you from just being able to get to the work that's necessary to do the healing.
Kind of feel that way, but yeah. Sorry.
Yeah. No, I think that might be part of it. I don't want to I'm just going to rapid fire a few other questions at you first. And then I want to come back to this vulnerability piece that you just brought up for a second. All right. So, in the course of your time of acting out with pornography, there's a few things that you said. I use it to go into myself. It's been a way where I don't have to be vulnerable. It's been used for emotional coping, for curiosity, for entertainment, for education. It's been used in all of those ways. Over the course of the time that you've had this relationship with pornography, if you just kind of sit and just kind of let it like rise to the surface, any answers that are there, maybe there's nothing that comes up. Has your use of pornography ever gotten in the way of your ability to perform at work?
No.
Has your use of pornography ever gotten in the way of your ability to maintain concentration or think clearly?
No.
Has your use of pornography caused you to go to places where you take other risky behaviors with your health?
No.
Has your use of pornography diminished the way you view yourself or caused you to feel like you're less than or can't stop or anything like that?
I don't think so.
Yeah. So the way you define yourself in terms of feeling like, is there any shame around the use of your pornography? Meaning, and shame meaning you see yourself as worse than or less than, or that message gets reinforced.
I don't think I thought about it that way, but I probably should have.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if that answers your question, but
like, have you, like, I'm thinking like it's pretty common for a lot of people when they're engaged in this behavior, there's a part of them that knows they don't want to do it. They end up going back to it again. And then afterwards, like, oh my gosh, like I'm a failure, or I'm not good enough, or I'm inadequate, or why can't I stop this? Because it must be something wrong with me. Anything like that?
a little bit.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. That would be pretty normal. The place where I'm thinking the most unmanageability comes in is in this other realm. But for other question, I don't know exactly where you stand in terms of your spirituality or relationship with a higher power, but has your relationship with higher power or spirituality been affected by the use of your pornography over the years?
I don't think so.
No. Okay. Your relationship with your wife been affected as a result of your pornography use?
I didn't think so, and maybe I'm deluding myself there. I guess I've never not been attracted to her. Anytime we've been close, one of the things that she said that there's some sort of porn-induced ED. I've never had I'm not trying to get into details here, but I've never had any problem getting aroused or staying that way with her. Mm-hmm. And so I'm a little bit puzzled about where she comes from that way. But I can definitely understand how, in retrospect, you could definitely see it that way. I feel like the times where we haven't been able to get together sexually, it's not been because of that. It's because of all the other tensions in our life that haven't. If we haven't felt a connection elsewhere, that would seem like the last place where we would be connected. Mm-hmm. So I don't think it did, but if it did, and then I couldn't see it, then I'm open to that possibility.
Yeah. Okay. So it's had an effect on your relationship, at least now, to the point that you're separated and your marriage has been on the rocks once it was disclosed. That's true.
Yes.
It had at least enough of an effect on your relationship that, did she know about it through the last 18 years?
She had discovered something on a tablet maybe in 2013. And within a year of our being married, but nothing since.
Okay. But you never told her openly or had open discussions about your use of pornography. What was your reason for withholding that information from her?
I felt like I would be judged harshly, and maybe rightly so. And I don't. That's not her. How she should have responded shouldn't have prevented me from saying anything.
What would have happened if she would have judged you harshly? What was your biggest fear?
That she would divorce me, that she would leave me.
Okay.
And I know it's something that that she said over the last handful of months, like, why didn't you tell me this? And it's not a good answer, but she can be very harsh with her criticisms of me generally.
Mm-hmm. You're afraid of her.
In some respects, I'm afraid of losing her. I'm afraid of her negative opinions of me. It could be financial. I mean, there's been it doesn't justify anything, but she threatened divorce 3 or 4 times in the last 5 years. Twice were related to finances, not because I was mismanaging them, but because there wasn't enough. I was kicked out of the house last March, actually about a year to the day, because we didn't have a connection. I, I didn't know really what that meant then, and I'm still at a little bit of a loss. So it's not a good reason for it, but over the years, it's been hard for me to be vulnerable just naturally.
Sure.
And then when I feel like it's going to be taken very harshly or poorly, it's an even more. I'm less inclined to do that, to be open.
Yeah. I think that's an honest answer, and I think that that's a pretty classic normal answer too. So I'd like to maybe just try to connect some dots and then ask you a few other questions here. All right, Chris, for a second, just so that our listeners can hear too, what I'm trying to get to is I'm asking you all of these questions. And on one hand, you've got this kind of like part of your brain that's saying, I don't think it caused this kind of a problem. It didn't cause this kind of problem. It didn't cause this kind of a problem. But it did cause other problems. It caused me to not be honest with my wife. It caused me to be on the verge of divorce. It caused me to have to hide, deceive. Part of it was because I was just afraid of her. Part of it's because I didn't trust that she could hold that kind of a stuff without some level of criticism. But also, it's partly because I was afraid that she would judge me harshly and then also potentially reject me. And that's scary for any human being, right? So what I'm hearing is that right, Chris? Is that?
I think that's fair. Yeah.
Okay. So what I'm hearing, and this is where I think it's kind of messy for you guys a little bit, is that on one hand, I don't blame your wife for looking at it the way she's looking at it and going, well, he hasn't really taken full accountability for the impact that his choices have had yet. Because, and I don't think it's on purpose, actually, Chris. I think it's because there seems to be this part of you that's very guarded, that's trying to protect you. And the way that it's coming across from your wife's outside perspective sounds like dismissal, minimizing, denial, rationalizing, all of that stuff. Even though that's not necessarily what your intent is. Your intent is trying to figure out and what I like about what you're trying to do in your work with her, it sounds like you're trying to be honest with her too and give her honest answers to her questions with the stuff, the work that you're doing. I wonder if there's a part of you that's so invested in that self-protection because of that vulnerability stuff that you talked about earlier, that it happens to package itself up in ways that look like even more denial, even though maybe it's not full denial, there's levels of it there. You said something earlier too that I want to tie into this now, where you said, if I have to accept these words, that the words like you're an abuser, you're a narcissist, you're an addict, you said that feels like a death sentence. Can you explain that to me a little bit? What do you mean by that?
On our drive to the airport a couple of weeks ago, she had used the phrase you don't get it. This is like having an alcoholic in the family who's abusive. And I took that really hard. I wanted to pull over to the side of the road. Because that's what my grandfather was to my grandmother for 40 years. And if that's who I am, I love her too much to be. I don't want her to be part of me. I want to make this right. I want to own the things that I've done, and even if I can't see it, but and if this is the kind of thing where she says that it's my shame that's prevented me from accounting this, okay. But I can't. I have a mental block there. I mean, maybe it's dramatic to call it a death sentence, but I have a hard time. I know I know the way that she felt about our son's dad. That and I maybe it's not fair to lay that on, but the way that she felt about her dad, our son's biological father, it never changed. That was exactly who he was, and once that die is cast, there you cannot, that in her mind it cannot be changed. And so if that's who I am, I just
I see.
Despair sets in quickly.
Yeah. Equals despair. Okay. So I want to ask you one more thing. You referenced your grandfather, who was an alcoholic, abusive alcoholic to his wife for 40 years. Let's just say worst case scenario, you are your grandfather. What does that mean to you? What's the story that goes through you if you are your grandfather?
Then I'm a hopeless mess.
I'm a hopeless mess. Okay.
Because that's what he was.
Okay. So your biggest fear right now, at least with what we're talking about, is that if I were to take on the ownership of the label of addict, narcissist, abuser, that would mean that you're a hopeless mess.
And he went to his grave that way.
Mm-hmm.
And he literally died. He died in his car in the garage because he was so passed out drunk that he died of tar fumes. He was so unwilling to see that's who he was and the damage that he caused that it literally killed him.
Yeah.
And
it's interesting, Chris. It's interesting, Chris, that what I'm hearing in you is that I don't think you are your grandfather, but the fear that you have that you are your grandfather is actually causing you to produce things that look like your grandfather. You're not actually your grandfather. You want to do better. You want to have hope. You want there to be possibility. You want there, and somewhere there's this mental block that if you were to accept that if I'm an addict, if I'm a narcissist, if I'm this or that or the other, that means there's hopelessness. And the pushback that you have against those words is so strong that it's actually pushing you to be more like your grandfather. So what if we were to change this just a little bit? Chris, do you have a problem with pornography?
It's that I use it as a problem.
Yeah. Okay. And those problems have caused you a lot of pain, a lot of suffering. You're currently in a lot of struggle as a result of having used pornography. Is that true?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. Okay. Do you see yourself as responsible and needing to be the person who needs to go to work on those things so that you don't continue to suffer the way you have?
Yes.
Okay. That by nature makes you not your grandfather. When we work with people, like here's where we start to get into the splitting of hairs. For a partner who's been experiencing the things that your wife has experienced, having some language to put things to makes sense for her and goes, oh, okay, like I feel validated now in what's happened. Like he's an addict, right? Well, what if we were to take off defining you as an addict and saying that you have addiction? Does that change it at all?
It does to me, because
Okay.
it's a difference between what I am versus what I did.
Okay.
And the language, and maybe I'm too stuck in semantics, and that's part of my academic training, but the difference matters.
Yeah.
And when it's I don't begrudge her for being hurt or upset or all the different things, but when we're talking about specifically talking about who I am as a result of this, not what I've done, to me that's more than splitting hairs.
Yeah.
And I can understand that the pushback comes off as defensiveness and minimizing and whatever else. But I also don't feel like we're in a spot where we can have that discussion where I can even say why that makes a difference.
Yeah. Well, I see why it does make a difference. And this is part of where I want to go with you today, Chris, is that, there's actually some research that's fairly recent right now that says that those who define themselves as addicts when it comes to addiction are actually less likely to get better or to get into recovery. And one of the reasons for that is because the definition of self as addict is almost like its own self-fulfilling prophecy that fuels more shame, which then leaves no space for them to actually have room to grow or develop or whatever else, right? Mm-hmm. So, that I'm in my own recovery. I had struggles with pornography for a long time, the majority of my life until D-Day happened. I have a similar story to yours. And for me personally, I define parts of myself as my addict self, but I never define my entire self as an addict. And the reason I do that is because I'm like you. I want to be able to have hope that there's a possibility there. So what I look for in my clients when they come in is I don't care how they define themselves. If they define themselves as an addict or they define themselves as not, what I care more about is their ability to answer these three questions, which you just answered. I have a problem. It's a serious problem, and I'm responsible to take care of this problem. Mm-hmm. And if those three things are true, I don't care what the language is that you use. You're taking your power back because you're taking responsibility. You're showing humility because you're acknowledging, hey, this is a serious, significant issue. And instead of rooting in and being like, no, I'm not that. I'm not this. I'm not that. Like that is so shame driven that it's actually going to fuel the outcomes that you don't want in your life. But if you can look yourself in the mirror and say, yeah, I've been using pornography to cope emotionally, to find education, to retreat into myself, to deal with life sometimes. And it has had some negative impacts in my life, especially in my marriage. And I would even connect the dots to saying, not just your wife being unapproachable, but your inability to be vulnerable. That's at the root of all of this, including the way that you've coped through acting out. So the acting out has been a buffer between the reality of your inability to be vulnerable in relationships, stacked on top of that, being married to someone that you deeply care about, that you don't want to hurt, but that you also really want to love you. And the fear of being vulnerable with her and being honest with her has led you to live a life that has included hiding, dishonesty, continued patterns of emotional coping. I don't care if you call that an addiction, as long as you can also agree, yeah, those things are all there.
Sure. And I think that's where, because with my therapist, we got to that point where I had, where I own and believe all those things, that they felt confident enough to go forward with it. I'm just struggling with the perception, or at least that my wife is continuing to use those words as kind of not flags in the ground, flags in the ground saying this is what it has to be, but it feels that way.
Yeah.
And and I don't know how to, even if not getting stuck in the words, but how do I make that real for her, that this is serious for me, that I am, we can talk about the words themselves, but that I understand her, that I've caused a lot of pain. Whether I will ever quote unquote get it the way that she wants me to, I don't know that there is such a place, but I'm doing everything I can to get there.
Yeah. I think that there's some coming together that could happen on both sides here, where what she thinks she needs is you to assign yourself as those things because of what it would provide for her, right? If you were to actually say those things out loud and own those things, then she would see that you're being accountable. She'd see that you're being, in her mind, humble, which would give her the feeling of safety. Like, okay, he sees this as a big deal. Like he's taking ownership for this stuff. So what she needs is an understanding of what she's really looking for inside of those labels. And then the discussion is about the things she's looking for: safety, accountability, humility, transparency, honesty. Are those principles there without the word being said? And on the flip side, where you could come towards her a little bit is there could be some work done, I think, on kind of like your own individual work where you're going. You're doing some really good work, it sounds like, with your therapist, where you could also detach yourself from what the meaning of those words means to you based off of what's gone on with your grandfather, right? If there was some way to do some of your trauma work of how you experience things with your grandfather to where you could go, hey, yeah, that was grandfather. That wasn't me. I'm not that guy. Like, then all of a sudden the labels don't have to feel the way that they've felt to you, which is what causes your defensiveness to come up. Right. And so if you were working on that to soften those things inside of you, then she could use that language and you'd be like, yeah, what she meant was all the things that I just took ownership for. Okay, I'll be good with that. Or she could come the other way with you and go like, okay, let's back off on the labels and let's look at the principles, because at the end of the day, the principles matter far more than the label themselves. Right. And what I hear inside of you, Chris, is I actually hear that there is a desire to work those principles. You know, I hear that there's definitely some fear, there's some defensiveness, there's something scaring you about those things. But I also hear that you are leaning yourself into this process, that you want to move forward, that you want to overcome that vulnerability piece, that you'd love to be able to develop a relationship with your wife where you could feel safe enough to tell her the things that are on your heart.
Sure.
And I suspect that your wife wants the same things.
I think so.
Right. And so too often we get stuck in that definition of label instead of, let's duck the labels for a minute and let's look at the actual principles. And yeah, there might have been a little bit of denial in the past there. I think your acting out has been connected to a lot of things, that maybe even an inaccurate understanding of sex because of where you got educated. That it fueled more of the belief that you can't be vulnerable because you've had to keep secrets. Like, all of that stuff is true, right? That could be its own version of unmanageability. I don't care if you call yourself an addict. And I would suspect that the people that matter to you most, deep down, they don't care that you're called an addict. They care that you look at those and go, yeah, I'm going to work on those for as long as I have breath in my body. And if you're up for the task, I see a lot of hope there for you guys to move forward. So,
yeah,
does that make sense?
It does. Yeah, it's hard to hear sometimes, just because it's, we'll feel like we're making progress, and then it's an explosion of, you're not seeing this, you're not doing that, and it's hard not being in the house to have, to find meaningful contact. And that's probably its own call or whatever, but, because it's, when you're already not having connections and then being, not occupying the same space for 6 months,
it's hard.
It's really hard.
It's really hard. I run into this, I think, a lot with, like, one of the biggest labels that I hear where people get like head to head in their relationships is that word abuser, right? Like, I'll go the rounds with my men's groups where they'll come in and like, my wife says I'm an abuser, and like, I'm not an abuser. And then we'll go, okay, well, have you done this or this or this or this? And they're like, yeah, I've done all those things. It's like, oh, by definition, that could be considered abuse, right? But we've all committed abuse to people. Your wife has actually committed abuse to you by the same definitions, right? So the issue is how we see that word abuser more than looking at the actual behaviors that we want to take ownership for. It's like, man, if I'm an abuser, I'm the worst person in the world. I'm hopeless. I'm helpless. It's final. It's a death sentence. It's like, no, I'm human. I do some things sometimes that even I regret. I want to take ownership for those. I want to get better. I can own those things. Like, that's the pathway forward. And if you can make some peace with that, I think you're going to be, I think it's going to open you up even more to the possibility of healing and connection with your wife.
Okay.
Right. So I don't think you need to go home today. Your assignment is not to go home and say, hey, honey, I'm an abuser, I'm a narcissist, and I'm an addict. Your assignment is to go into yourself and say, have I done some things that even I don't like in my own moral code? Yes. Do I want to work on those? Yes. Am I committed to doing those things in a humble, accountable way? Yes. Go home and tell your wife that. And that if she wants to define that as being an addict, that's okay because you're on the same page.
Okay. No, that's fair. Thank you.
Does that make sense?
It does. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I know we're just about out of time here, Chris. How has this gone for you? Do you have any other questions or thoughts?
No, I think it's gone pretty well, or as well as I suppose it could go. I don't.
You're not hopeless or irredeemable.
No, I appreciate that. It's. Thank you.
It doesn't matter what the words are that used. That's not true. Right? There's always hope. There's always growth. That's the beauty of this process we call recovery. And I don't care what the labels are that are used. It's the guys who submit themselves to the process. Those are the same kinds of guys that I want my 4 daughters to marry. So
mine too.
Yeah. So all right, Chris, thank you for your willingness to come on today.
Thank you, Tyler.
Best of luck to you.
Appreciate it.
All right, you guys, thank you for listening here. I'd love to hear your thoughts or your feedback, or as we did earlier, throw a review out for Chris if this has been meaningful, or share this episode with someone else who might benefit from it. And again, thank you for being here with us.